shelf in my bookcase. So 703, 706, my 7300.
I was getting about 200, so...
Okay, great. And is it like, if you don't get like a wave of satellites go across, you have to wait for some, or is it pretty much constant?
Where we are, we're getting North Carolina satellites. So you can see on the app what satellite it's hitting.
Yeah.
So we're hitting over North Carolina, so it'll get better as... Like the dish looks almost like that sitting in my house.
Yeah.
Because it's pointed north, completely north.
Okay, so this is not a dish, though.
It is. It moves itself all by itself. It lights itself up, and then it uses an array of antennas, which inside will do this.
So where's the anvil rotator?
It's all in there. If I plug it in now, it'll move itself all around trying to find a spot.
I've seen one.
Yeah, that's right.
So you say that's an antenna tuner?
Yeah, this is an L network antenna tuner. It's set up for my end-fed wire, so you got your input from the transceiver here and the output for the wire there. And it's got a roller inductor on there and a variable capacitor.
Roller inductor, I love it.
Did you create this? The second one was wound on a piece of PVC pipe and just zip tied to a piece of 2x4, and it was just hanging out in the open. So this one at least keeps RF out of the shack because I put it up on the windowsill and it's all enclosed. So
Excellent. That's good. Yeah, that's good. All right, guys, I gotta get some.
Hello, hey.
Yeah, how you doing?
All right, I'm doing good. How you, Bill?
Well, I'm glad you got a ride tonight. Robert, thanks for bringing him down here. Yeah, sure. All right, sir. I gotta look around here a little bit.
Okay. Joe Jack got here yet?
What?
Joe Jack got here yet?
Yeah, Joe Jack's here. I'll send him
Okay.
over. All right.
This is what she said to me. She's telling me she wants us to do it. You're telling me that you don't have to. What did you say to me? Okay, so let's do that. When we go to one convention. I know it's only two floors down. It's not like you're going to these are fun. I love these.
The stickers in general?
No, the headset.
Oh, the headset. Yeah, I'm looking at headsets too. So I saw the.
Well, I don't like the speaker. I'm gonna get it. I don't like the speaker.
Oh, this one has the head thing.
Yeah. This looks like the one I have home. Oh, it is.
Not much left in the storage unit.
Good.
Well, there's stuff in there, but not much good stuff left.
Well, that's the way to, slowly get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my.
And don't take the junk, or just take it and toss it. Yeah. That's what we finally used to do with some of the stuff. We were schlepping this stuff around for 2 years.
One of the things I want to talk about. I got 100 amp hour battery.
Well, you know, do that when you decide to have your antenna party, get everybody
I
up there.
think this might need a separate,
Well,
separate time.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but I mean, we wanted to, I know, measure the cables, take them all out, measure them, label them.
I'm having a second floor condo.
Working the DX station, it'll give you the weather report in Siberia if you're having to work at the Siberia station. It's 25 below. Literally, it gives you the station and all the information there. And to me, it's just a lot of fun to see all this stuff going on. So I have this on my monitor above my main monitor screen in my ham shack, and I'm constantly looking things. You know, I've got the local time, got the UTC time here. It's just got all kinds of features. It's just like you can't limit the things that you can do with ham clock. DX clusters, I'm just kind of learning about that. And so it's a lot of fun.
What's the website again?
What's that?
What's the website?
The website clearskyinstitute.com.
W1BBU, and I've been licensed since 1958, and ham radio has changed an awful lot. There's a few people that are fairly new. At that time, one of the normal ways of entering the hobby was to get a novice license, and you had to be able to send and receive Morse code 5 words a minute, and a fairly simple technical exam, but there was some work with some circuit diagrams and some things that are still on the technical side now. But the thing about the novice license was at that time was only good for 1 year, and then you had to upgrade technician, but or conditional or general class ST. And amazingly, I still have the manual that I built the thing from, or the QST I built it from. But it was a learning experience. Some of the parts came from junk TV sets, like most of the power supply came that way. It claims it's a 1-tube set, but there's a rectifier in the power supply, and the 1 tube is 60Q6A, and it's a screen grid pentode.
I've got a Flex radio and a modern laptop, so the Flex radio's biggest problem was it didn't really work well for remote CW. If you weren't sitting at the radio, the key is plugged into the radio, and if you're remote from it, which is the main feature of it, there wasn't really a way to plug a key into your laptop and use it with the software. So a guy, N5NHJ, came up with a program called WK Flex, which takes input from a wing keyer and then transmits it into the Flex radio's interface, so that you can use a wing keyer with the Flex radio. And the little tiny wing keyer that's regular USB is sold out, so I looked into how do you build your own. So that's where I came up with this little box here. So I just wanted a little box with just as minimal as possible and a USB-C to plug into my new Dell. And so I built it out of a bunch of parts. Most of it I had on hand. I ordered the USB cable and the enclosure and the headphone jack for the key. So the total parts were $16.90 to build this, plus a couple miscellaneous things, transistors and resistors and capacitors that I already had on hand. So it was a really cheap project, and it works really well. There is a little bit of a lag when you send, but you can hear, there's a little speaker in here, so you can hear your side tone, which is another big problem with remote flex, is you don't hear, even when you're sending with a computer, you don't hear your sending, so you just have to hope and pray that it's going out right, or for the CWT that you change the word name in exchange to your actual name in exchange. Otherwise, it actually sends the words name in exchange over the air. So yeah, I've got the schematic up here. It's pretty simple. It's just it's got a little transistor amplifier for the speaker, and I used a rotary encoder because I had them left over from my antenna analyzer project I showed you guys a couple years ago. This schematic actually has an extra for a straight key, which I didn't even wire that part in, so it's a very simple circuit. I'm using the K3NG keyer code, which is a really popular open source WinKey compatible program for Arduino. So the Arduino Mini I used, and I highly recommend that code. It can also do RIDI, and its brand name is the Mo RIDI, which was in QST a couple months ago, if you heard of that. So you could also build one of those for the same price if that's something you're interested in.
Also work off a little solar panel, provides enough voltage and amperage to run a small motor that I've hooked up to the tuning capacitor of the box. The bigger problem was finding the lowest RPM motor, because when you're turning the loop, the bandwidth, the Q it has a high Q, so your bandwidth is very, very sharp when you're tuning, and that will zip through across your waterfront. So I had to slow it down. I used a 200 ohm resistor on the positive line to the motor. And I can tune and use the waterfall now remotely, and I only have to have a coax. That's the only thing I need. There's no DC over coax or anything like that. I can snake it through the slider, sit in the air conditioning, and play radio. It's wonderful. I love loops. Oh, and I want to give a big shout out to the POTA folks, the people that do Parks on the Air. They are wonderful and more than willing to work QRP operators.
Oh, yeah.
You know, everybody, you know, if you've got a big signal, it's kind of easy to work with somebody. But QRP folks, I found that the POTA folks take a lot of time to work them, and that's much appreciated on my part. But I've had a lot of fun with it, and the new SDR radios make it a lot easier when you have a waterfall, like the 705. I also have a TX500 coming in, which offers the same thing. Some of the Zygoos also have a SWR analyzer that makes tuning the loop very simple.
So I had a regular bike and I wanted to make an e-bike. For like $150 you can buy this stuff and convert most any bike into an e-bike. So you need batteries to do that. That's the only add-on part. So what I did was I had a bunch of DeWalt batteries. So I bought a little adapter on eBay, and you put two together, you get 36 volt for the wheel. So I did that, and then it was homebrew night. So I said, well, I gotta put radios on it. So I put a solar panel up here. It's 100 watt, puts out 5 amp. And I got a 100 amp hour battery, lithium ion battery in here. And I got 2 radios in there and an inverter in there. And there's 2 different solar controllers on here. One's called a boost controller. It uses this panel and it will charge 36 volts. So it's a 12 volt panel, 18 volt, but for 12 volt. And it'll charge 36 volt. Or if this is charged or whatever, I can flip a switch and I can charge the 100 amp hour 12 volt battery. So, and I put all the antennas on one side because one antenna on the panel's shadow reduces the panel drastically down. So I put everything on one side. I'm running a iGate here and a little Tar Heel. I can't put the whip on it now, but it's got a up and down switch. So you can move the thing up or down and, you know, change your bands or whatever. And then I have this is for my 8800, 2 meter, 70 centimeter. You can do crossband repeat or whatever, any of that stuff. And this is one of those antennas that does 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and GMRS, MERS. It'll do all those frequencies. So that's hooked into my 857, because that has 2 and 70 centimeter and HF. And this is obviously the HF antenna. And then of course I put one of my Arden mesh parts here and here. And this is Starlink internet, satellite internet. So it straps on the bike and I could just drive, if you know, you got somewhere with no internet or whatever, you can bring the whole thing and plug it in. It's all set to plug in and it will line itself up and it moves itself. And yeah, you got internet and everything works. So any questions? It was kind of just playing around. So. And that's it. So,
Awesome.
so I got 2 microphones here. So put my radios here. Yeah. I was making e-bikes, and then I'm like, well, I gotta put ham stuff on it to bring it here. So I got a wire, you know, to lay out if you need more. So yeah.
All right.
And I wanted to bring Starlink so everyone could see what it is in case they're interested. So.
Cool.
Any other questions?
I move we nominate Norm as Nerd of the Month.
Yeah.
I bought one of these, the 857Ds, back when I got my tech license, and didn't get on HF for a while until 2020, when I got my general. I did not have an antenna, so I built an L network tuner. It didn't work. I built another L network tuner, and that one worked great for about a year, and now I built another one. So inside here, there's a variable capacitor and a roller inductor, and so on the back, I got a connection here for my station ground, and input for the transceiver, and a little thing going out to the wire. Makes every HF contact I've made has been on some junk like this on a 70-something feet of wire. Works fantastic. Not too much else, it's just packed into a PC power supply and looks ugly. This guy, it's a handheld that everybody loves to hate, Bofeng UV5R. Who here has one? Show of hands. Right? That's a lot of hands. Some of these, I've done this on it, I've tried this on 4 of them. The only one I was not able to get it to work on is W4CBJ Joe's. If you go into Chirp, the free software you can use to program these, and you change the upper limit of the VHF band, and you put it at something like 226 megahertz, you can convince the thing to operate on our 220 bit. It puts out about a half a watt. It's good enough for me to hit the SPARC 220 repeater for my house, and I check into the nets with this thing fairly often. Obviously, you can't use a 2-meter antenna, so I made a simple 220 whip. Anybody got a 220 radio? I can make a quick contact here. No? That's kind of the story with 220, but easy way to get on for 25 bucks and some parts. So, yeah.
Does it change the display?
Yeah, I mean, it shows frequency.
Yeah.
The only thing about that is you can't program the 220 frequencies with Chirp because it'll complain and say this radio doesn't support it, but you can still do the field program to put memories in there. Yeah. So.
Plug this stuff all around, so I got a box and I put everything in the box. So when I go to do POTA, I just grab this box and out we go. It's got everything from my wire antenna, my cables, the match, grounding. This is a little big match. I'm gonna get a smaller one, I think. I use the 7600, the 706 Mark IIG. I can do all the modes with it. I've got a signal link in here, so I can do all the digital modes. We did FT8 the last outing, or outing before that. So it's just an easy way of being able to get out the door to do POTA, and it's a lot of fun. You really can make a lot of contacts. I think the people out there who don't want to just go around and search the bands for, somebody calling CQ, when you get on the POTA website, you can see, you can spot them.
I made a 3D printed paddle here. It's magnetic, sticks on. I got this design from somebody on the net, on the internet, but I made a lot of changes to it to make it more to my liking. And some of the parts are still on order. It's taking a while. I'm gonna get a better cable and stuff. And I started on one that's entirely my design. So this is gonna end up replacing this as soon as I get it to a more workable state. So that's just kind of the heart of it, minimal plastic to make sure it's working. So that's it.
What are some of the issues you had with making it?
Well, this one, the paddles were quite a distance apart, and I noticed at the field data, the ones you guys use, it's just real close.
Yeah.
So I thought I gotta make it feel more like that. So I put these little cams on the side so I can bring the paddles in, and then the guy had like just a tie down on it. I like to, when I print, I like to do as much with the printer as possible. So I put this threaded thing here to put the cable and just thread it down so that it holds the cable.
Yeah.
So that's like, cable's not gonna go anywhere. I put some tracks for the wire because they were just kind of hanging there. I'll probably put some silicone or something to keep the wires nice and neat. And I'm waiting for the little, connectors to put on here so I don't have to just have the wire wrapped around the bolts. But
How much of that was done with the printer? Everything, including the red box and everything?
everything except for the magnets and the the screws and the cable.
And that's it. So,
Awesome.
so I got 2 microphones here, so, put my radios here. Yeah.
So good.
I was making e-bikes, and then I'm like, well, I gotta put ham stuff on it to bring it here, so.